Every Wednesdays, we meet as leaders from all walks of life to inspire each other, to encourage each other, because there's so many things that are happening. And as leaders, we need to come in and talk about them. We meet every Wednesday, same time, same place. And again, we're meeting tonight, and we are having a wonderful topic tonight with a powerful speaker that is going to be talking to us. So thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to our members, to our regulars, to men and women who join every Wednesdays, or as much as they can, or as often as they can. I always say we really learn a lot from each other every Wednesdays. These are our master classes. There is no way you will attend these sessions and will remain the same. Never, because we're here to inspire each other. A special welcome to our colleagues who are joining us for the first time. If you are here for the first time, a special welcome to you. Please feel at home. I would like to learn from you. So don't hold back. If you want to participate, you are more than welcome to participate. The format is that we introduce the speaker, and the speaker addresses us, and only then we can answer, or rather pose questions, and then we can get into a discussion or a conversation, as we always do. So please do feel at home. This is a safe space. This is the community of leaders. This is where we empower each other as leaders. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. As I've already introduced myself, I'm Mazwe Majola from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. We develop leaders, we empower leaders, we produce world-class leaders. We have realized that we need to contribute, whether to our society or to our country or to our families, to contribute by developing leaders, because everything revolves around leadership. If we can all make sure that our leadership or our leaders are held accountable, are responsible, are ethical, are competent, are caring, and yeah, we'll win the war of whatever that we are facing with as a community or as a country. Tonight, we are discussing a very interesting topic. It's leadership in energy transition. Leadership in energy transition, from ambition to action. And we are going to be addressed by my brother. He is not new, and he's not a stranger in this platform. He has addressed us many times few years ago. And obviously, I'm sure that Thabo hasn't been with us maybe over a year or so now. He was asking me, how is the platform? How is the format? Is it still the same? And I said, no, but Thabo, you were there, but you were actually one of those early leaders that really made this platform to be where it is now. It's my brother, as I'm saying, that is really someone who contributed a lot into growing and developing this platform. He has addressed us many times here. There was a time when he hosted our conference at Siemens Energy. Actually, that is where we launched our book, Women in Leadership book. He hosted us. I think was in 2022, Thabo, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember.
I think it's about 23.
Oh, 2022 or 2023. I don't have my copy of the book, but we had a women's conference there, big women's conference, and then also we launched the Women's in Leadership book that we have. He was the one who really hosted us. Is there in if you drive on the highway N1, whether you're going to Pretoria or from Pretoria, there is big white building of Siemens on your left or on your right. That is where they are. He is the chairman and the managing director of Siemens Energy Southern Africa. He's got so many accolades, so many things, but a very humble man. Today he just said, or tonight he said, no, just say that and full stop. Say that and full stop. But he's a very gifted man. You know, he's one of those brothers that inspire us a lot. Who's running this huge, big company, and we're very proud of him. Thabo, my brother, thank you so much. I know how busy you are, and thank you so much for availing yourself, and also for your humility, as I've said, and your contribution and assistance towards Wild and also to this platform. So we are so glad that we'll be addressed by you tonight. Over to you, my brother. Here are your people, leadership in energy transition from ambition to action. Over to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. I hope I'm audible, just to confirm. I wanted to share a couple of things. I think first and foremost, thank you very much for the beautiful introduction. It's humbling to see the platform growing, but also I think it's over the years I've kind of tried to keep abreast. But I think it's good to see the diversity of leaders that have graced the platform, enriching on this sometimes quite a difficult and intriguing topic around leadership. Once again, I think thanks for the invitation. I think what will be quite fitting tonight is to have perhaps talk about this energy transition. Meanwhile, I think perhaps when US president coming in, it was a different conversation to how geopolitically it has shifted of late. Maybe we can get to that in the Q&A side of things. But I wanted that tonight we address, an element of our trying to move away from raising hopes to making things happen. So we'll talk a little bit also about tackling talent in transition, which is an important topic about improving and preparing the next generation of leaders and individuals who will be tackling the country's energy landscape themselves. And then we'll explore something which is maybe in the Q&A side, something which is also a bit difficult but necessary to talk about, which is a utility in transition. That has an impact on the conversation that we're trying to get to. And then also we'll talk about how we normally help countries to accelerate the shift to also localization, which is part of the ambition in energy transition. I thought one of the important elements I wanted to do to introduce Siemens Energy is to perhaps play a short video that might just capture the essence of it, and then we can get into a conversation. So I'll share that video for now, and then afterwards we'll carry on with the rest of the presentation.
Imagine a world with zero CO2 emissions. Imagine that all power is generated from renewable sources and used in all sectors of public life. But how can we get there? The answer is simple. Step by step. Join us on the road to decarbonization. Let's start with something simple that lowers CO2 emissions immediately. Let's start by increasing efficiency in power generation. Coal-fired plants can produce the same power output with less fuel when old steam turbines are upgraded or replaced with new high-efficiency turbines. Or take a bold step and convert coal plants into highly efficient gas-fired combined cycle plants. And then there's still more to do. We could upgrade the gas turbines or replace them with new, more efficient models. Data-driven digital tools are another way to optimize a plant's performance and increase efficiency even more. With renewables coming into play, we need to increase flexibility and think about storage solutions. For example, let's look at flex power solutions. Fast starts and stops allow for greater flexibility and lower fuel consumption. And think about short-term storage solutions. Batteries add black start capability and balance load differences resulting from fluctuating renewable infeed. Imagine providing efficient heating and cooling from thermal plants with combined heat and power. By adding industrial-scale heat pumps, even renewable sources could be tied in. The further we walk down the road towards decarbonization, the larger the share of renewables in the mix. This brings new challenges, and we need to further improve flexibility and grid stability. Grid stability measures like implementing a synchronous condenser is one way to compensate power fluctuations. Renewables, battery storage and heat pumps will enable the development of more and more CO2-neutral decentralized hybrid solutions. A backup from conventional sources will still be needed when battery reserves are low and the wind doesn't blow or the sun doesn't shine. Now add electrolyzers into the equation. They turn excess power from renewables into hydrogen that can be stored in large quantities. This creates entirely new options. Gas turbines can now be co-fired with hydrogen and natural gas to further reduce CO2 emissions. Today, some smaller gas turbines are already capable of burning 100% hydrogen, and in the future, more models will be able to do the same. They would enable the design of CO2-free decentral solutions fully powered by renewable sources. This can be done by combining electrolyzers and storage solutions with re-electrification in small hydrogen-fired combined heat and power plants. With renewables at the heart of our energy systems, storage systems become essential. Short-term storage solutions like batteries need to be supplemented. That's where mid-term thermal storage solutions using heat pumps and long-term storage solutions like green hydrogen come into play. Imagine the scalability. Add in more sectors: mobility, industry, agriculture. Imagine capturing CO2 from industrial processes or directly from the air. Combine hydrogen to make e-fuels that can power transportation on land, on water, and in the air. Now we've reached the point where we're generating all our electrical energy from renewable sources power into chemical energy sources like green hydrogen, which can then be transferred to other sectors. Imagine a world with zero CO2 emissions. Let's make sustainable, affordable, and reliable energy a reality for all of our tomorrows. Imagine that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I think the imperative that we see in the industry is around us as a country standing at a pivotal moment. And that moment demands bold leadership, strategic collaboration, and some innovative solutions and actions. So I think this is the organization I represent, and these are the technologies that we kind of sit with from a full spectrum perspective. But you then have to match it to country realities and so forth. And I think that's part of what I would look into at the moment. So our country as well has set some ambitious goals. So they would like to transition to a cleaner, more resilient energy system. We would like to create jobs. We obviously want to build a sustainable future for all South Africans, but some of these dreams and commitments alone will not suffice. So it has to be through some decisive and collective action that we turn these ambitions into some tangible results. So from ambition to action, at the core of it for us lies the leadership imperative. In Siemens Energy, we are guided by these what we call leadership essentials. So it's about 6 of them, and they seek to drive in the urgency of the moment. So if you look at each of them, it will speak to leaders as curious learners. So here, you encourage that you should be humble and invest in your own development by regularly seeking honest feedback, as well as new impulses from inside and outside the organization. Whereas if you look at leaders creating the future, you have to be cost conscious, manage multiple priorities, but by delivering performance and also having your eyesight and eyes gazed on the long-term support, long-term success of the business. And then you have leaders delivering as one. This is quite critical, and I'll speak to it because in it comes an element of diversity of delivering as one. But I think here, while you're focusing on individual commitments, you act on behalf of the holistic organization, beyond only your own organization or your own business or your own country, but also in the interest of customers, in the interest of communities, if also in the interest of other people. And then leaders grow at our people. So here, I think the metric for us is, how do you hire people better than yourself? How do you develop strong teams and talents, and actively place those talents best across the organization? And the one that I like most is around igniting change. So it's around challenging the status quo, role modeling values and behaviors that create this multiplier effect. And I think we'll talk a little bit about it, also how it translates into South Africa. And then the last one is around safety and integrity. So you live by and proactively intervene to ensure that a certain higher standards of integrity and even at the business and personal level is visible. So these are the value systems or essentials that we often talk about and so on. And I think where this was quite useful was taking these and looking at it in terms of South Africa's changing energy landscape and trying to understand what are the significant challenges that we face. And I think on that, undoubtedly, all of us would agree around the aging coal infrastructure. So hence the load shedding that keeps coming up. And thereby leading to questions around energy insecurity, the carbon intensiveness of our economy. These are significant challenges on one side on our energy space, but yet you have also this opportunity where we've got abundant sun, wind resources, hydro, impeding gas conversations and potentials that could also transform our sector as well. But there's also an undertone that we know and we experience and we often talk about it, but not necessarily tie it to also the transition that we're going through, which is the socio-economic factors that South Africa sits in. If you put all of those in the basket of those, this is where leadership comes in, and how do you balance this? So we've often talked about, and mostly you'd hear of an energy trilemma, where you're trying to balance the security aspect, the sustainability, and the affordability bit of it. But at the same time, I think there's an additional leg, which is socioeconomic factors. And I think this is something that has pushed a lot of our leaders to challenge the status quo around how we think of the energy transition in South Africa. So we've seen also an additional power plant that was shut down prematurely, and yet I think they underestimated the impact it will have on the socio-economic landscape of that particular town. So what is clear, at least from our side, is that we can see that the government has outlined a clear set of priorities and direction, which is the integrated resource plan. It's in place, or at least it's getting there. But I feel that we require certain leadership that is innovative and collaborative to drive those actions and to see some of the examples. And I think for South Africa, we needed to ensure that we build a resilient and inclusive strategy. So a type of leadership that for us as an OEM, German headquartered OEM, deeply entrenched in South Africa, we have to extend ourselves beyond technology. So we're quite well known and quite strong from a technology perspective. But I think we also realize that whatever that we are offering, if we were to remain relevant, we have to extend ourselves beyond technology. So we have to look at how social responsibility and inclusion plays a part, not just only from our employees, but in the communities that we play in and so on. For example, I mean, it's investing in local skills or development or community engagements. But I think it's deeply around demonstrating how industry can lead in social equity. And I think we have an intervention which we call the Energy for Good. And the Energy for Good has sort of three focus areas, two on a proactive approach, where we focus around access to education. We will promote STEM and the reskilling. So here we talk from high school level, targeting also providing equal access to females, and also making sure that we reskill. Those are either if you're moving from coal or to renewable sector and so on. So that's an education theme that we enable through various partnerships and so on. And then proactively also drive the energy transformation. So here it's around supporting clean energy projects and climate education. How do you expand the energy sources that we have? How do you promote recycling programs, climate change mitigation activities, and so on? So that lies in that pillar. But I think the last one, which is become also quite prominent and relevant, is around how do you react from a community perspective, especially when disasters strike. How do we support natural disasters, especially where electricity is affected? How do you strengthen resilience to climate-related hazards? And we could see the impact of the changing climatic conditions in some of our provinces and so on. So we also then become relevant as a key stakeholder in that space to try and become relevant to support those things. So we've toiled with all of these ideas and spent a significant amount of time trying to understand what does that mean and what does that become our role locally. And you'll see that we roughly came to some kind of a framework which resonated with the way we could support in South Africa. So at the heart of it is that how do you drive local impact? And we formulated a triangle. I think it was born out of two elements, which is we've seen that a combination of technology and talent have shown to have a strongly associated with the great economic growth and development. And then in the second realization, if we look globally, we could see that there are no poorly energized rich countries, nor any highly energized poor countries. So energy sits at the heart of it, and therefore we have to kind of play with an intersection of all of those. And the framework that I present here seeks to capture part of what our action lies in. So the first one is around policy and leadership. So if you want to drive greater impact, we have seen that, or maybe I start on the technology and innovation because that's the comfort space that we bring. We recognize that if you look at the South Africa's ambition to expand the grid, to become a lot more energy resilient and energy secure, so embracing renewables, looking at gas, now there's talks of nuclear and so on. In there lies a lot of depth and a lot of strategic acquisition of technologies. And here you'd have to look at what do we have in country. We used to have the pebble bed modular reactor program. We have the likes of the CSIR that also does deeper research. So how do we partner that we can bring in technology and innovation as an anchor to local impact, and then use policy and leadership to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture for us here is, for example, we talk about if you're going to procure such a significant amount of technology, be it develop it in country or export it, you have to develop and lead in terms of an industrial base. And that base is the one that then can help with anchoring something that will be relevant from a local perspective. And I think once that kind of a policy and leadership comes in terms of where we need to go, then we can look at what do we have from a capability and capacity perspective. And that could close the gap. And some of those things relate to training elements, they relate to revival of events, they relate also to how do you expand your local partnerships, how do you infuse SMMEs in some of these technologies, in some of the sub-suppliers, and sort of a sub-supply component suppliers of the ecosystem that could drive that local impact framework. So we normally rest on this, and this is part of what we're driving in. And how do you translate the ambition that you've already started to sketch and seek to move into some kind of action? So for each of these three pieces of the framework, there's different sets of pieces of work, but also there's different sets of pieces of partnerships and collaborations that we do, both locally and internationally, to try and make it whole. What we don't have locally, then we'll partner in. What we do have locally and we can advance on it, then we can move. But I think where oftentimes we find ourselves is we tend to spend a great deal of time around policy and leadership, and therefore not providing sufficient comfort that certain things will be going in a certain direction and so on. So I think those are the pieces that for me are pretty much relevant in making sure that we can support the energy transition going forward. And then if I get, I think that's for me the heart of the conversation of where this comes in. And then in closing, Prof, I think the more important aspect for me is which is what I wanted to touch on also, is the kind of leadership that we're starting to see emanate that has greater relevance is on diversification. Diversifying leadership is becoming more of a necessity for this climate and energy. This framework that we talk about a lot, it didn't come from the same call it space that we've always been operating from. Came from when we started to seek different views of a diverse set of stakeholders. And therefore, we need to recognize that we need to encourage new leaders to come in and embrace the space around energy and climate. In particular, for me, I think we need more women. I often don't see that space being visible. I think the people of color one is well known, and I think we're still driving towards that. But I think inclusive priorities are what we need to integrate in our climate and energy policies. So in order to represent the public good, we really need to diversify on who is involved in the conversation. And I think that's the first part, that it starts from there. So a more transformative approach to energy policy is desperately needed. And we can only achieve that if we change and we become a bit more diverse and inclusive in how we lead. I will park it there for now, and then maybe engage in conversation.
Thank you very much, Thabo, my brother. Thank you. Can you close the slides from your side if we are done, so that we can? Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time to engage the speaker on this topic of leadership energy transition. Thabo, if I could just ask, if we're really talking about if maybe we can just use the phrase that we've used in the topic, from ambition to action. If we could just stick there and focus there. How best can we handle this? If really we are not, ambition will be there at some stage. We'd like to transition, not only to transition, but to get to a place where our energy is very diversified, and more especially on hydro and wind, solar, and other stuff. But how realistic in terms of action, if we can talk about action now, that is this thing doable? If it's doable, how can we make sure that it really takes place, or it takes place? What needs to be done? And I like your framework, the local impact framework. Maybe if I can just add there as well, which one will be the first one? Is the policy and leadership, or is the technology and innovation, or is the capability and capacity, or is there anyone that you can say, maybe let's focus on policy and leadership for now, and let us build our capabilities and capacity, and let us look our technology and innovation, or all of them, we can do them simultaneously, or can we go by step in order for us to be realistic?
So very relevant questions, and maybe I start with the ambition to action one. So I spend a great deal of time in that space, and really it's around translation of ambition to action. There's back and forth motion, because I think certain actions, then you realize you need to adjust your ambition, specifically around expectation management of timing. This is where I try to emphasize. So I think that the tail end of your question seeks to perhaps ask whether this is doable. I think we have to start there, that it is doable. and then go back to kind of what sort of actions would support that. I think if I give a little bit of a context, the conversation in our country started incorrectly when we talk about energy transition. The conversation started by technologies competing against each other. So switch off coal, switch on more solar and wind. That the conversation cannot start there. I think the conversation is now rebalancing itself from fossil versus renewable. So to where now I think realization has settled in that it is a mix. And the degree of percentages of mix of technology is what then the conversation must get to, not a versus. So it's not an either or, is all the technologies need to coexist to give us greater energy sovereignty. So calm heads are starting to prevail. We find that we're now more talking around what is the degree of this mix look like? And we're starting to now get into a bit more scientific conversations around how could our grid look like? Because that's what the grid, which is the freeway of electrons, what can it carry? Can it carry a huge number of renewables versus the kind of a dispatchable and undispatchable kind of energy? So it gets into that, which is the right conversations to have. Because then it seeks to manage expectations, but the ambition to be to transition is there. It hasn't changed. The Paris promises, the Paris Agreement, that's still there. I think where we now get ourselves to is a conversation around managing expectations on timing of those. We also saw a phase where we tried to accelerate that transition. We ended up with more load shedding, right? So we're now trying to rebalance and say perhaps our ambition is still there, but the actions that we need to take, they perhaps need to be a lot more inclusive. And I think this is where the diversity of voices onto the platform becomes important, and that is starting to take shape. I think that it's also encouraging to see stability in certain leadership elements of course, the utility, the ministry, and even the government of national unity. That I think also they've started to open the door for a wider set of stakeholders to say, how do we traverse this journey? Where do we need to push back on the promises we had made in greater favor to South Africa and its dynamics that it's got? So I think that part, I've grown more convinced that the path and the set of actions that we want to take are correct. The other one on the impact framework, it's also not a priority. It's a balancing how we look at the triangle. It's a triangle purposefully because you could have one side pulling on much further than the others, and therefore you don't end up with quite a perfect shape. And And therefore, when the sides are no longer equal, it's no longer, you know, the triangle that you seek. And where we see over the years, perhaps more recently, what I've seen is if you have more policy pooling and the other pieces are not following at pace, then you don't get the local impact that you seek. So it's always about trying to balance that to get the local impact. And I have plenty of examples. I mean, we have seen moments when, from a policy perspective, it's pretty clear around, let's localize, as an example to our technologies, let's localize transformer manufacturing. The leadership and the clarity is there, the technologies exist, but the capability is missing. So in the end, you find a facility that cannot produce the same quality products as the rest of the competitors, and soon enough, it will not be able to be sustainable. So those are one of examples. The other example is you find the technology and the capabilities being packaged correctly, but there's a policy misalignment. Could be policy misalignment from one ministry to the other, one department to the other, but be that as it may, it's misaligned. And because of that misalignment, you find there's a lot of money wasted on the ground, where firms have turned back and say, this exercise is quite expensive. I cannot sustain it because of this misalignment. And therefore, you find that local impact is also inhibited. And I think one particular example, which is very clear, and even the minister mentioned it, was if you look at the multiple bid windows we've had from a renewable energy perspective, and I think just over 8,000 megawatts or so. And if you look at on the ground, how much industry and local impact has been created, it does not match. And I think these, for me, are part of the conversations around that triangle that needs to be balanced properly in order to get maximum impact.
Thank you very much, my brother. Thanks a lot. I see a question from the chat room. Is from Lynn in Southern Africa. Would you like to express yourself, Lynn? Obviously, as you do that, if you don't mind, maybe just introduce yourself so that we know exactly who you are. Lynn in Southern Africa. If you can just express yourself, unless if you maybe want us to read your question, but we always encourage people to express themselves. We'd like to give you that opportunity. Lynn?
So much, Prof. And Thabo, thank you so much for your great presentation. Really quite a relevant topic that we're talking about. My name is Pat van der Loosstraat. I'm actually the founder and director for Lean in Southern Africa Leaders. We're an organization that really looks at empowering women, in the energy sector primarily, although we've become a bit agnostic. So that's a bit about us. We focus on the Southern Africa region. So my question really is around, in terms of, how is it that we're building up these critical mindsets for us to tackle these, critical aspects of the energy transition? I'd just like to hear Thabo's views on, what are some of those leadership mindsets and capabilities that we believe are currently missing or that we need more development with amongst South African energy leaders, both in public and private sector, that can help us drive this ambition to impact that we actually want to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thabo, would you like to take Andiso as well, or want to do one by one at a time?
If there is another, I'll take the second and I'll answer both of them.
Yes, okay. Andiso, over to you, and then Thabo can respond to both of you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, Mr. Molekwa. This is a very interesting topic, seeing that at this point, what I always advocate for is how do we make our leadership, high-level strategy meaningful to the ordinary person in a community? Because when we talk about energy transition, at some point it will have to be localized. And one example that I can draw is a research study that I conducted on energy efficiency, specifically for the manufacturing sector in South Africa. I made that 20-page paper to 1 page to say, simplify it to a booklet and make it easier for consumption by the ordinary person at the lower level. I love the theme that says from ambition to action, spending time at a strategic level, developing all these plans and systems, and then now having less time to actually implement. I think you are driving a very good project and a program to ensure that we move from strategically planning and all that. There are a number of exercises. What I wanted to check, two things. Do you have your own research unit, or do you make use of best practices? Because part of leadership is learning from other people that are doing it good and are succeeding in it. So do you have your own research unit, or do you use generally best practices? For instance, in India, I know they are quite advanced in this particular area, as poor as the country is, but in terms of technology and energy transition, they've made quite some steps. I appreciate the infusing of SMEs. It is an interesting aspect as well. Thank you very much. Those are my comments. Appreciating the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Anissa. Thank you very much. Over to you, Thabo.
Yeah. So I like the question of mindsets and behaviors. I'm not sure whether has COVID got anything to do with what I've observed? But nonetheless, I'll share. I think one of the strong mindset that needs to shift, in some quarters it has, but I think it's the element of building strong partnerships. I find very much that it's not top of mind. Let me put it that way. I think there's an ingrained focus on caring for oneself, which is okay. But I think if we care for others and deliver on promises, especially customers and communities, externally focused. But then I think if we put that first, that will drive this partnership thing. So although when you do raise the question of partnerships and so on, most people are supportive, but I think it's supportive to the extent that there's a clear link. So I think some of the, I'll get to Andiswa's point as well. I think some of the elements and topics that we tend to face as leaders is sometimes certain programs and initiatives and drives does not always have to translate into a Siemens Energy winning business. I think there's a greater societal good that we have to drive, especially if it's well within our means or our ambit. That's the first one. The second one for me is this inclusiveness conversation I ended with. I think we really need to be a lot more intentful around it. But I think we also need to set ourselves personal KPIs. I mean, so, it starts with how many, the diversity of the people you have around you, and how do you make sure that you provide an inclusive space for them to thrive, to innovate, to share their experiences and so on, because that's how we get to better solutions. And I think that's something that I find that I see it in prominent areas where it's like a conference where they insist we have to find diverse speakers, otherwise this doesn't make sense. And I think those are, for me, parts of the mindsets that I think needs to shift, because what we are dealing with and what perhaps we will leave behind that others must deal with requires that it's addressed by a wider, diverse set of people. And then on Andy, so I think the question on people became prominent when we saw, I think we've seen where Eskom closed down one power station. And I think for us was also an internal conversation around the importance of translating what is this that we're trying to do. So we've tried 3 things. The first one, we tried creating a hackathon for high school kids. So we actually created a game, and in this game we spoke. Was I think a two-day hackathon, and we gave these high school kids some form of a lecture and an understanding on different technologies, and we gave them a problem of Mpumalanga region. How would Mpumalanga region transition, and what do you need to consider from wider set of industries, businesses that you need to consider, and so on. And I mean, what these scholars presented was shockingly amazing. I think I severely underestimated their understanding, and you could see the winners infused a lot of more secularity kind of a thinking, and they were able to talk about how local business ecosystems will benefit from energy transitioning, how the CO2 emissions could be reduced significantly, what technologies you could employ, and the sort of time spent, this medium term, long term, that sort of thing. And I think that gave us greater conviction that we perhaps think energy transition is an adult conversation, but actually it's not. And therefore, we really need to be engaging a lot more on closer to the ground. And then the second one, which was also a second version of the game, but this one we have not deployed, but this one we would want to open it up a little bit more. So it's a competitive game. To get more points, you have to traverse and kind of build this sustainable energy environment that you are in, and an island that you have to live on, and that sort of thing. So those are the 2. Then I think the last one for me, it's also in development, but it probably answers your second question, that we rely more on best practices. So as a global enterprise, we often share in the sustainability rounds, and we call it Energy for Good. In those rounds, we share best practices on what works in which country, and so on. So in those rounds, that's where we tend to share and pick up some of the examples that work. Where we have tapped in once in a while is a research that comes through. So we'll have various research papers being shared, or research projects and studies that have been done. So that happens not as frequent as these sharing spaces that we tend to see. But also, I mean, this video that we had, that I had played earlier on, you know, you can imagine you walk into a township and you talk about energy transition. It's like, what are you talking about? And you say, well, Eskom has to shut down. Yeah, first, that's a non-starter way of a conversation. But I think if you share a much longer video, and I mean, we've been challenged before to say, why don't you have this video in Zulu and Tswana and so on, so that people can, when they see the video, they see the bigger picture. They don't just see solar panels and then suddenly less employment and less skills transfer and that sort of thing. So I think there's quite a, I think, a greater extent of work that needs to be done there. But I think it's a space that I can also confidently share that we are not expecting. We technology and engineering specialists, but in the spaces that we operate, we see these gaps, and we'll close it the best way we think we can. And then whoever else also has a view on how they could help to enhance what we are working on, and we tend to want to collaborate.
Perfect. Thank you, my brother. Thank you. I see a hand there. From my brother there, Tsepo. Let me see. It's Tsepo for now. Yeah, let's check Tsepo. And then we'll see if there's anyone who still want to ask anything. Okay. It's because I want to take both of you, so I will take Tsepo, and then Tsepo will be followed by Sis Ketiwe, in that order, please, and then Thabo will respond to both of you. Tsepo, over to you, my brother.
Thank you very much, Prof. Am I audible? Can I check?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Prof. Thanks, MD. Unfortunately, I came in a little bit late, and I missed some. I made a promise to Prof that this is a session that I will hate to forget. For some reason that my colleagues and I are within this space of just energy transition. And one of the issues that we're talking about is the issue of inclusive economy, making use of just energy transition. And we are fortunate to be engaging with the Energy Transition Working Group, together with the international relations in regarding to the G20 summit to be hosted soon, and with ongoing government 20 ministers engagements. And as such, we are proposing to have a side event that will look on the funding of countries, particularly the African countries who are struggling when it comes to energy infrastructure and the entire system that will lead to the African continent having a reliable and safe energy supply. Now, my question is whether, for example, Siemens can be in a position to support this particular initiative, which is not going to be only looking on the G20, but beyond G20, and to have an ongoing conversation on just energy transition until a situation where Africa is fully compliant on the green energy that is required, having energy supply, but with the support of big institutions and big energy institutions like Siemens and others. So I'm trying to check your support, and if, for example, with your respect, you can allow Prof to give me your contacts.
Wait, Tsepo. Are you hearing me, my brother?
Yes, I'm with you, Prof.
With huge humility, can I please ask us to stick to the topic of tonight? Not talk about our events and our marketing and advertisement. It would be very unfair to ask Thabo, will you be able to support our initiative or our what? I think let's talk about leadership in energy transition, from ambition to action for tonight. And any other thing, let's take it outside of the call, not here. I think it's very unfair for Thabo. Any question related to the topic at hand, my brother Thabo?
Yes, Prof. I'm coming to say, giving the leadership that can be demonstrated by institutions like Siemens in support of the African continent, particularly on role players, African businesses, small businesses that are operating within the energy sector. Whether, for example, Siemens will be in a position to guide those small businesses that are operating within the energy space. That was the core of the question. Then on the outside issue, I wonder if you can allow Prof to give me your contacts so that we can have the behind discussion.
Thabo, please. No, we don't do that. We don't do that in this platform. We don't do that in this platform. Okay, so I think Thabo has heard your and understood your topic. And let us take Ketiwe. And then any other thing will be taken offline. But you cannot be asking such things like this. So I'm just protecting the speaker. Over to you, Sis Ketiwe.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thanks, Thabo, for such an inspirational presentation. I was quite interested in the triangle and in terms of how we also consider inclusion. I'm just thinking, what is your thought in terms of looking at the corporates? How do we bring corporate leaders or how do we actually prevent corporate leaders focusing internally into their organizational needs and include the communities and also include the other chapters in terms of development? How do you bring then the energy, the new energy into the farmers, the farm women who actually need the energy and make it cheaper? How do you see that integration if you're looking from the corporate environment perspective?
Thanks, Sis Ketiwe. Just before Thabo, before you respond, my brother, sorry, I think there is a follow-up question there in the chat room. Unfortunately, I didn't catch your name when you introduced the one from Lynn in Southern Africa, but she says, when does
it's Pat van der Loostract. I think Thabo will.
Pat.
Yeah.
Okay. No, thanks, Pat. Oh, wow. Thanks, my sister. Thank you very much. But do you want to answer the question or want to read it for me? We've got a very nice question there in the chat room. Maybe if you can ask it.
Thank you. Yeah, Thabo, I'm quite familiar with the visionary work and the impactful work that Siemens is actually doing. So, factoring all the things that you have been doing and what you've been guiding such an organization in South Africa, I just wanted to know, when the history of South Africa's energy transition is written, what do you hope Siemens' role and your own leadership legacy will be remembered for?
Over to you, my brother. Over to you, Thabo.
Order to African countries and so on. Part of a global organization, we often take stock of people in the world still don't have access to electricity. Yeah? So I think that number was about 600 million. And of the 600 million, the majority is on this continent. So you can imagine energy transition, and my continent comes up, and they say, "Geez, majority are on your continent, and therefore we need to tackle that." So I think yes, it's important that exists, and it's true. But I think it also shows the gravity of the work that needs to happen. So I think any effort around finding solutions around how do we fund this energy transition is important. I saw a piece of work come up. I think it was could have been the African Development Bank, not sure, but I think earlier in this year they set a Mission 300, which is they'd like to get to 300 million by 2030 or something like that, to provide electricity to those people. And I think the crux of it for me is the funding. So a lot of countries that we interact with, they have an ambition to get to 100% electrified. But I think the mechanics of how does that come together is often troublesome, not only from a funding perspective, but also you could find some of the policy instruments are not ready or not existing to enable these to be funded well. There's a myriad of factors, but I think for me, to Tsapo's point, we are active in a lot of African countries, either via physical presence or we have a footprint. So each country, especially on the African continent, in some way or another, has got our footprint and support. So I think that's the spaces that we go to, and those where we tend to support. So happy to support in any of those cases. The difficult one from Ketiwe on inclusion of corporates, it's difficult but easy, I suppose, because most corporates are willing to help, right? So at least in our sector, when I speak to a lot of leaders, they are keen to help. They are keen to get involved. And then when you get to the second tier of why then are you not, then you find a lot of inhibitors. And as corporates, there are certain spaces that I don't want to dominate in. That's not my forte. I cannot seek to be a specialist on community engagement. It's not our space. So therefore, we try and find either partners or channels where we could easily add value or amplify what is already in existence, to try and cover that space. So I think you find a lot of corporates where they tend to shy away is where things get a little bit gray, and therefore they tend to pull back until there's a greater clarity and understanding. But I think by ingrained nature of some of the corporate leaders, they are keen to get involved in assisting at a community level and so on. But I think it's the mechanics of how it happens. I think the other element around Nketi, which is I want to treat it as a separate topic. The notion of cheap energy, I'm not sure what do you mean there, because it's a very complex thing. I think if it's about lights and so on, I think we've seen how batteries have gotten cheaper and solar power has gotten cheaper. So perhaps if it's that space, that's fine. But I think you would see that energy needs tend to get a bit more complex as you cover the basics, and therefore pricing becomes a very sensitive thing. And the reason I want to treat it differently is also because it's very important, especially in this energy transition that we're going to, that we're in. Affordability is suddenly dawned on a lot of stakeholders that it's going to be a challenge. You see it in tariff applications that tend to go in. It becomes a heated conversation, becomes a political conversation because of also our situation as South Africa from a socioeconomic perspective. So very relevant. I don't seek to try and answer that, but I'm just trying to label it that it's a very sensitive topic. A lot of it has to do with how we've historically been structured as provision of electricity in South Africa. Pat, I saw this one. I think it's a team effort. I suppose I become the face of that, but the deep aspiration we have is on two fronts. I think the first one is unleashing this human energy. Well, we have a very youthful population, And I think a lot of the youth I meet, all they're looking for is an opportunity. All they're looking for is an exposure. And I think unleashing that energy that sits at a human level, that's one of the things that I think would be quite important. And then I think visible and sustained local impact. So I talk about sustained, visible, you can attain it, we've tried it, but we failed on the sustained element. I think I now pair the two, that it has to be visible impact on the ground, but we have to make sure that it's sustainable. We ourselves, we've tried to set up certain local assemblies. It was not sustainable for a myriad of factors, and that's why I talk about that triangle being important. So I think for me, it's let's embed sustainability in the initiatives in the actions that we drive, and contribute to unleashing human energy. I think we've got a lot of firepower as South Africa trapped in this youth that we're not giving an opportunity to, that we're not giving an exposure to, that could actually propel us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Thabo. Thank you. If I may just ask, do you think maybe as South African we are under pressure from the international international communities when it comes to this energy transition, that we actually find ourselves even want to do something just because we want to please them? And I like when you really emphasize on the principle of the mix, that is not about either or, the versus, but it's about the mix, because at some stage you think that we must just leave everything that we had, even if we still do have some reserves, just because we want to rush into that area. So that we and I want to take Simphiwe Ngati there. Maybe you can just answer both of us. Madlogofu, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Prof. My question is, in terms of the implementation of a green renewable energy transition for electricity generation, what will be the strategy to retain jobs and the economies of towns that are dependent on mining coal? And the second one is, will renewable energy transition companies absorb and train those workers who work in the coal mines in these towns, taking into consideration that in the future, renewable energy will ultimately be the dominant source of energy through the vision of creating an energy sustainable future? Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Thanks, Madlogofu. Thank you, sir. Brother Thabo, over to you.
Yeah, Prof, I think the question around pressure for me, I don't think we are under pressure, especially from an external perspective. It could be there, but I think that's not the only driver. I think, of course, we are part of a global community. Of course, on the continent, we are the highest contributor on the CO2 perspective. And therefore, I think there's a concerted effort as us being part of the relevant global community to say, look, you also have to do something. So I think that exists. I do think, though, we were not very clear. We were not very bullish about how we would traverse this energy transition. So parts of the perhaps the proof points I use is, the just energy transition investments started flowing in, and yet we have not developed a plan on how we're going to engage the community, and I'll speak to Spiwa's question as well, because we accept the investment, and and yet you don't have a plan for how is it that it's going to work and activate and maintain the level of activity that happens in those communities and so on. So I think that's the part that I have started to see elements where there's a bit of a confidence now in what South Africa needs to do and how its journey it's going to take shape from a global pressure perspective. But I also want to say we are perhaps not under pressure because I think climate change is real. I know we get into other corners where they say this is a hoax. It is real. I think we've noticed several changes ourselves. We see certain patterns happen in the region, not just only in South Africa. For one to get convinced that something is happening. Maybe you don't want to call it climate change, but something is happening, and it was not always the case. So therefore, there is that element of trying to contribute to it. Of course, others will argue that our contribution would not matter much and so on. I think that I'll park that for later. I think we do have to. I wouldn't say put ourselves under pressure, but I think we have to be very confident and bold on how the transition will be. I would place that as more important than worrying about external pressure, because I think once you share with the world and also with the South Africans what ought to happen and what will happen in our best interest, I think you'll find that it will be well supported. Pierre's question is a problematic one because I wanted to first start by, I always say coal will still exist, right? So, because at first the conversation was, no, we will shut down and everything. No, coal will still exist. The extent of how coal will exist in our energy mix is also, and I think the portion of it is also dependent on how quickly we advance clean coal conversations, clean coal technology conversations. So the faster that gets going, that determines how the percentage of contribution of coal into our energy mix. So I think the first part, coal will exist. It will be a question of how clean do we get that coal to be and so on. So those efforts are undergoing there. I think renewable energies, of course, they will be dominant, but we are seeing that in a lot of, if you take a town that runs on coal to power, you compare it with like for like with renewables, you will not get the same amount of employment opportunity. So I think that's the first part that we have to be honest about. We will not get the same number like for like from what you have in kind of a coal to power in the renewable energy. So that's the first one. The second one is that as renewables energy dominate, we have to be intentional around how do we transition workers. So in other words, and I think I like what Eskom now is talking about. They say, before we shut down, let's have these new technologies there, existing, side by side. And then you phase your shutdown, as opposed to shut down, then start this one, which also does not make sense. And I think part of managing change is having this side by side coexistence, and then of course one kind of closes while the other one carries on. And I think that's where the skills transfer could happen, and some of the other opportunities on the ground, business opportunities, SMMEs, participations, and so on. But I also come back to the point around the local impact has to be, how do we localize certain things? So, if Mpumalanga is the energy complex, why would it still not be the energy complex, and what sort of resultant industries or resultant economic activity exists as it transitions. And I think those are, for me, part of the policy and leadership questions we have to be clear on, and then we have to be intentional on, and then drive that. And then you can pull the other two to kind of support that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Thabo. Thank you. There's a question there from Angel. Angel, would you like to express yourself? You'll be the last one, and I will ask Thabo to respond to your question and also to give us his closing remarks. Over to you, Angel.
Thank you so much, Prof. And thank you so much for this insightful discussion with Mr. Thabo. So mine is an easy one. What I wanted to know is, what advice would he give to young engineers and energy professionals looking to lead in a future defined by decentralization, digitalization, and decarbonization? Thank you.
And who told you that was the easiest question?
I was going to say, Prof, thank you for rescuing me. Partially.
Over to you, Thabo. Thanks, Angel. Thabo,
thank you.
So it's a relevant one, and I suppose I might have shaken a tree there around this human energy. I deeply believe, and I think I've seen it also through my career. It's education and exposure that has helped to get to where I am, and and I think this is something I would always advocate, that at a minimum to do that. So I think the one element, maybe I share prematurely, perhaps it will come next month. So one of the things that we recognize around the question of growing this talent and creating exposure and so on, is when we have a lot of projects or have a conversation around execution of projects and so on, that we see is coming as the government talks about this IRP. One of the things that will trip us is around capability and capacity. Although we have a highly youthful nation, but also I've seen some of our most educated people. However, what is lacking becomes either industry experience and so on. So we're talking with a couple of industry leaders around how do we create an industry mentorship program that is not driven by one organization. So how do we come together, club in together, that we could enable this program for bigger benefit. That's the current conversation that's happening, and I think part of my advice rests around mentorship. I think always strive to have a mentor to succeed, and also I think to grow yourself, but also I think immerse yourself in a lot of the spaces that happens. I think the space is, as I said, I mean, it's what we thought pre-US president, and now post his occupancy of office, things have changed. And I think some of the dynamics has to do with how do we respond technologically, how do we respond from a capability perspective, and so on. So my advice, I think, if you want to lead in that space, immerse yourself around the diversity of technologies, immerse yourself around experts, mentorships, and so on. And I think we'll also, I know the team will make the announcement sometime next month, but we're trying to create this platform where people can jump in and also participate in the sector. yeah, that will be my advice. So, Prof, I think I close. I think for me, thank you for the platform. I also think the myriad of questions have kind of also shed some light on perhaps as a litmus test of where we stand as a nation and kind of the headspace that most leaders are at. But I think the ending for me is we can only progress if we progress at a pace, and this is my realization, is the pace of our leadership agility. So we have to progress this step by step. But I think it's in the heart of that piece around the agility side. So if you have agile policies, agile leadership that can respond to what's happening on the ground to create meaningful impact, we'll make progress, right? So, and I think I look forward to joint contributions and joint positive impact from everyone around what we need to do in a society. I think we've got a wonderful opportunity and one of the best times ever, where we can not only re-energize our economy, but at least pull in a greater pool of people into that industry and economic activity to change their lives. So I'm excited about it. Every day it's a beautiful space to be in, but also it comes with greater responsibility, and I'm appreciative of that. Thanks for your time, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, my brother. Thanks a lot for your insightful and informative and very thought-provoking presentation. We've learned a lot. Indeed, we'll engage with you moving forward, but we've really delivered a very good and instructive presentation. And as usual, we always learn a lot from you when you address us. Thank you for availing yourself to address us tonight. As I said earlier on, that in the midst of your very busy schedule, but we are really proud of you for what you are doing, not only in South Africa, but in Southern Africa and in Africa. It's so good to have leaders like you. I always say that my wife always reminds me that this platform is here to really just to unleash and to show the world the caliber, the quality of leaders that we have in our country. And we are very proud whenever we are getting people so that we can show the world that, as we always say in this platform, that South Africa is awash with great leaders. We must just fix our leadership. And by doing this, we are really trying to do exactly that, because leadership, it's a journey, it's not a destination. Hopefully we'll arrive there one day. Let's hope we'll all be alive when we arrive there. So thank you so much, my brother. And ladies and gentlemen, to everyone who joined us tonight, thank you so much. To those who joined us for the first time, please do remember that we meet every Wednesday. So we are here again next week, Wednesday, same time, same place, same login details, same everything. We are just here, and we always promise you these are our master classes. There's no way you'll attend it and not be empowered. So thank you. The session is agenda until we meet next week, Wednesday. May God bless you, and may God bless Africa. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.